Okay, sorry guys. I accidentally pressed the end button. So I'm gonna have two parts to this, part one and part two. So this is part two. Let's finish this up. Okay. So we talked about this. Let's go to the next slide. Enter. Okay. So that's what that looks like. Remember, you got your quad tray, right? That's when you just take in one quadrant of the mount, an impression of one quadrant. Then you have your section tray when you're just trying to get the interior portion. And then you have the full arch tray where you get the entire arch. Mainly they use these for like dentures and stuff. Steady mount, those two. All right, so adaptation of the tray. Now, being that these trays, they're like kind of pre-made, well, they are pre-made. Of course, they're not going to fit perfectly for everyone, even though you put the tray in the patient's mouth and you try to measure it and make sure it fits good and stuff like that. Sometimes it still doesn't fit right. So there's a trick. You can use some utility wax and put it around the borders to make it higher, or to extend the end of it, like where the molars are. Like say you tried in a bunch of trays and the only one that works is one that's like exact, right? But you need your remember, you gotta make sure that your borders are extending by the molar region at least 2 to 3 millimeters. So you're gonna add a little bit of wax to extend the tray, so you can kind of play with wax in that way to kind of help, right? So if the patient has a high palate, hold on, my phone is about to die. A high palate, and you can use it in the palate area for that. Okay. Also, say the patient comes in and they're trying to get like a denture or something, and there's a hole. Okay, so when you take impressions, you don't want the impression material to go in a hole, into the hole that's maybe in their tooth, because that's going to mess up your impression when you go to take it out. So you can take the utility wax and plug the hole, take an impression, and then take the utility wax out and throw it away. So you can do a bunch of things with the utility wax to kind of help with your impression. Okay. Custom trays. So a custom tray, this one is constructed in the lab. So basically they'll take like a preliminary impression, they'll send it off to the lab, and they'll have the patient come back in once their tray comes in, and then they'll take another impression with that. Okay, so there is something where instead of trying to use the stock trays or the ones that's already made and trying to play with it with the wax and stuff, you can just have your doctor take not you as in you have the option. It's the doctor's choice. So if he prefers to do a custom tray on that patient, then just know that that patient will have to come in prior to getting, whatever they're trying to do, get a preliminary impression taken. Y'all will send that to the lab. The lab will create a tray based on that impression that fits like exact, fits perfect to how it should fit, or just like exactly for that patient, which is like a custom tray. I keep on saying like, I'm sorry. But yes, so once that comes in, they can take their final impression. So there's 2 different trays. Remember, it's a stock tray, which is already made, or a custom tray, which is made in the lab. Okay, tray adhesives. I'm not going to go deep into this. This is really not that important. Just know that anytime you spray a tray adhesive, you need to let it dry before you go into the mouth with it. If you're a stickler and you want to make sure everything is done perfect, which as you should, you can read the back of the bottle, but most likely all of them are the same. You just spray it dry, let it dry, then take your impression. Also, the reason why I'm not going too deep into adhesives is you won't be the one choosing this. The doctor will purchase what they want to purchase. Okay. All right. Hydrocolloid material. So hydro means water. Colloid means gelatin substance. Okay. So depending on the type of hydrocolloid, it can change from a solution to a solid. And that can be and that is irreversible. Or sometimes it can be reversible depending on the material. So sometimes the hydrocolloid is irreversible, right? It's changed by chemical factors. And then other times, or depending on the type that it may be, it can be reversible, where it's just changed by thermal factors. I will say this now, you can write it down. Elginate is an irreversible hydrocolloid. You will not be able to get Elginate back to its into its solution form, or how do I say it? Yeah, you won't get it back into the solution state. Once you mix that and it gets hard like gel, it won't go back. So write that down. I think we're on number 7. So Elginate is an irreversible hydrocolloid, which means that once it changes from a solution to a gel, you can't go back, okay? Also, you need to know that Elginate is the most widely used material for preliminary impressions. That's important. Write that down. You may see that again on the test. All right. We're going to skip composition and chemistry. Okay. All right. So there's two phases of Elginate. So of course they have the solution phase, right? That's when you first add the water and it's all liquidy and you're able to mix it. And then the solid phase is when it gets hard, then it turns into a gel. Okay. It also says at the bottom that the strength of the hydrocolloid is not as strong as elastomeric. Remember I said earlier in the PowerPoint that elastomeric material would be the heavy body and light body, right? And that causes for like a really accurate impression. So that's the difference between those two types of materials, okay? So the gel strength of a hydrocolloid is not as strong as elastomeric. That one gets really, really hard. The heavy body, light body gets really hard. All right. So when you take Elginate impressions, right, because it's not as strong, you want to make sure it doesn't tear in the patient's mouth. If it does that, you will need to take it again, okay? So just make sure that when you take the Elginate impression that you read the manufacturer's instructions, that you leave it in for the full length of time so it can completely set, and then you remove it from the patient's mouth. And that's also why we use the adhesive as well, so that it doesn't lock in the mouth. You're able to really pull it out without destroying the impression when you're using the smooth trays. Okay. Packing and storing Elginate. This is important. Get ready to write. Okay. So it does come in a variety of ways. Okay. So you need to know that the shelf life for Elginate is 1 year. So question number 8, what's the shelf life of Elginate? 1 year. That is for sure going to be on the test. All right. And it comes in a powder form. It'll normally come in a tub of powder, and it'll come with these little measuring, the little cup or the scooper where you can measure your exact amount of powder.